What is up, fight fans? Welcome back to Picking a Fight. I'm Latch, and today we're going to be looking at the main event of UFC 280, Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev. But before we get started, don't forget to like this video, subscribe if you haven't. We're actually putting out videos for almost every fight night and pay-per-view, so if you're looking for content like this, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss out. And check out our other videos. We're doing every other fight on this main card. Go ahead and check those out. And let's jump right into it. So we got the number one contender, Charles "The Bronx" Oliveira. He is 33-8. He is 33 years old. He's 5'10" with a 74-inch reach, and he's coming off back-to-back wins against Justin Gaethje and Dustin Poirier. He's currently on an 11-fight win streak, and he's going against number 4 ranked Islam Makhachev. He is 22-1. He is 31 years old. He's 5'10" with a 70.5-inch reach, and he's coming off back-to-back wins over Bobby Green and Dan Hooker, and he's currently on a 10-fight win streak. And he's actually coming in as a minus 180 favorite, while Charles Oliveira is a plus 155 underdog. You know, the odds are very close because this fight is very close. You know, it's very hard to tell who's going to win. Yeah, but let's start with Charles Oliveira, the number 1 ranked lightweight. You know, he should be the champion right now, but he had issues with the scale in his last fight, so he was stripped of the title. But Charles Oliveira, he's obviously a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu ace. You know, with very much improved striking. He basically grew up in the UFC. You know, obviously his jiu-jitsu is super dangerous. He has great positioning, and he's always a threat. You know, he's always looking on the offensive, trying to get his submissions. But as of late, it has looked like his striking is very dangerous. You know, he has very good technique. He has very good power in his shots too. He was able to put Justin Gaethje down, which is, you know, a very rare thing to do. We've only seen guys like Dustin Poirier and Eddie Alvarez do that before. And, you know, he was kind of able to hold his own with Dustin Poirier. I will say his defense is a little lackluster. He rarely moves his head. His primary defense is moving backward. Sometimes he gets caught with some very big shots. And in this fight, if he gets clipped, him going down and using his jiu-jitsu as a threat will not be viable, especially against a very powerful wrestler like Islam. But I think in this fight, he needs to come through with some immense pressure. The same type of pressure he came out with in his last 2 fights against Dustin and Justin. You know, he came out with so much pressure with his striking, threatening his strikes. He ate some big shots to get there, but he was able to do that and keep them on their back foot, which kind of stifled their offense. And I think against a wrestler like Islam, he's going to have to do that big time. You know, most people would not throw their kicks, especially Charles likes to throw that front kick, and he likes to get in close with elbows and knees. And a lot of people will be wary of that against wrestlers, since you never want to get too close where you could get taken down. But I have a feeling Charles doesn't care. But in my opinion, I really don't think he should be grappling Islam. I think striking is his best shot. We have seen Islam hurt. Obviously, he got hit with the fucking nuke when he got knocked out. But I think Charles can replicate that power. You know, if he really puts Islam on the back foot, maybe he can land his big shot that hurts him. And in my opinion, I think Charles' striking is way better. Obviously, his defense leaves a lot to be desired, but I think his striking is better than Islam's, because we know what Islam's going to do. You know, he's a powerful wrestler. He obviously always uses his background in Sambo, and we always know what he's going to do. You know, obviously, Father's Plan Part 2. You know, same thing with Khabib. These guys are grapplers through and through. And in my opinion, I don't think he'll stay on the feet as long as he did with Bobby Green and Dan Hooker. He shot pretty quick in those. And I think in this fight, I think he's going to be looking to make a point. And that is that he's overall the better grappler than Charles Oliveira. And that Sambo obviously beats Jiu-Jitsu. You know, they've been beefing for the longest time, those communities. And I think he's going to go out there and try to prove that. In my opinion, Charles is always too willing to go to the ground and get on his back. You know, against Dustin and Justin, he tried to pull guard a few times, and I think he has to avoid that completely. He does not want Islam on top of him, because I preach this all the time, but I think great wrestling will always stifle great jiu-jitsu. I think it's just because these wrestlers are always so fucking strong that they can stifle your attempts to sweep and to change position and to get in better positions. And in my opinion, I think Islam's wrestling will smother Charles' grappling. Obviously, if this stays on the feet, I like Charles, because Islam, although his striking has improved, he still has that very weird Khabib striking where it's not very clean. You're constantly like moving your head everywhere, but it does work, and it has worked for him so far. And you know, it gets the job done. It's just to kind of hold his own until he can get to the wrestling positions that he likes. And yeah, I think Islam's strength will be on display. I think he's going to take Charles down pretty easily, and I think he's going to smother him, and he's going to stifle any jiu-jitsu attempts, any submission attempts that Charles throws his way. Charles Oliveira has been subbed before a few times, by grapplers that I felt he was better than. So, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if the later rounds, like the championship rounds, if Islam's able to tire Oliveira and eventually get a submission. But I think the safest bet for me, I think Makhachev wins by decision. I think his wrestling is going to be too dominant. I think his wrestling is going to absolutely smother Charles' jiu-jitsu. And I think he's going to be the new lightweight champion of the world. Yeah, I think Makhachev wins this. I'm rooting for Charles Oliveira. I think they did him so dirty on the scale. Obviously, it is his fault, but But he's been clocking in and choosing violence every time. His last 2 fights were crazy. That was just one round, the Justin Gaethje fight, and it felt like it was 5 rounds of pure violence, and it was just one. Obviously the Dustin Poirier fight was amazing, and his fight against Chandler was, again, crazy. So he's been clocking in and choosing violence. So I'll be rooting for Charles in this fight. I just don't think he'll be able to do it. But you never know with someone like Charles, who has improved so much over the years. But I think it is Islam's time. But yeah, let me know down below what you think. Do you think I'm underestimating Charles Oliveira? Do you think I'm giving Islam a little too much credit? It's going to be a great night of fights. UFC 280 Oliveira versus Makhachev. Brother, this card is absolutely stacked. Start to finish, top to bottom. This thing is absolutely stacked. Personally, I'm on the East Coast. And on the East Coast, the main card starts at 2 p.m. The early prelims start at 10 a.m. So go ahead and mark your calendars. Go ahead and put that alarm because the time is a little off since they're in Abu Dhabi. So it will be earlier throughout the day. So don't forget, do not miss out on this card. This is probably the best card of the year. And hopefully it lives up to it. And I think it will. And yeah, I'll see you next week. And until then, take care.